Hey guys, this is Mel. So sorry for the delay, but I am ready and back to talk about Motherland Fort Salem, episode 305, titled Cession in Session, which premiered Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, as well as episode 306, titled Book Club, which premiered Tuesday, July 26th, 2022. I'm recording on the 28th. Huge apologies for the delay. I wasn't expecting to combine the two episodes together. When 305 aired, I actually forgot the episode was airing that night just because I had a huge presentation right after work and I was really prepping for it, and I was just too hyped up on nerves that I forgot Motherland was also on that night. And then by the time I got to the point where I was watching it, I was like, you know what, might as well just combine it with 306 to truly talk about it. And then I couldn't record until today because my parents unexpectedly came to visit for the last 2 days, so I didn't really feel comfortable recording while they were in the next room. So we're doing it today on the 28th. So huge spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the two episodes already, please go do so first and then come back and see what I have to say about the two episodes. My other reminders are up on screen, so take a moment to write yourselves with those. Technically, there's only 4 episodes left of the series, and I just things are really picking up with this. I think I'm going to stick with my last formatting of the double episode, where we're going to go through the 305 what happens, and then we'll go through the 306 what happens, and then as we go through the shocking, the favorites, and the peeves, we'll cover both episodes before moving to the next section. Sounds all good, everybody? I hope so, because that's how I'm going to do it. So let's go. 305 what happened. So timeline wise, I'm thinking it took place the day after the events of 304, just because it seems like it's the next, they say that it's the next day for the council is there, so I'm pretty sure the previous in 304 it was the Yule. I think they were all talking about it's the following day that they'll be meeting the council, and 305 is about them meeting the council, so hence my suspicions for that. Episode reminder is the fact that we do see the council trial happening within the secession for our bellwether unit. Bellwether unit. The first scene of the episode is at Fort Salem, where the new students are trying to go to their class on mother tongue, but are kind of stopped in their tracks by oversight, specifically Colonel Gerald, canceling the class, saying that, not canceling, I should say postponing the class, even though it's kind of like a cancellation, because apparently learning a different language from mother tongue is not unifying. It's more separating the witches from the non-witch community, when oversight is there about trying to try to bridge the gap, which is a load of bull, I will say. But did I mention anything else? Okay, I'll say it here. Nope. We'll mention it later. I have it later on in tidbits, so keep a note of that. So, storylines, though. I picked up on 3 specific ones. First one being the council meeting, the second one being the Camarilla attack, and the third one being behind enemy lines. So the first one with the council meeting is that pretty much, like in the promo, the council already decided on sending the unit back to DC in the promo, which I had issue with last time, and yet they wanted the meeting to get some answers from them. After getting some answers, there's a new decision where they will help the unit escape the secession and kind of help them make their way to California, which is where Tally is from. But in return, none of them, including Rael, can return to the session afterwards. Which, isn't that going to be kind of tricky, because doesn't the session kind of span from north to south of the states? So it's in order to get to the west side or the east side, you'd have to go through the secession, unless you're taking a flight over across of it, right? That's tricky territory right there, right? But anyways, I digress. The second storyline is the Camarilla attack, which kind of blends into the first, because as the Bellwether unit wait to be transported out of the secession, Albin Hurst and his soldiers attack them at the holding house. This is where we see Hurst being able to use his new vocal cords in their own workings. It seems like more huge blast of powers than really any finesse to it. But we do see the return of Rael's father, Edwin, and he's being used as a hostage by the Camarilla, but this is also where he finds out that Rael is missing, or presumably dead, and because of that, Alder, with the mycelium power, intervenes, saves Edwin, kills a whole bunch of Camarilla soldiers, but Hearst is able to escape. I think the reason why the mycelium wasn't able to grow out from Hearst like it was able to do with all the other soldiers was because Hearst had the witch vocal cords implanted in him. And I think because the mycelium doesn't attack a fellow witch, I think those vocal cords were enough to buy his safety, which kind of sucks, but makes sense. So he escaped, and there's that. Third storyline, behind enemy lines. We see Anacostia and Sterling are pretty much stuck on an operating table within a Camarilla base. They manage to escape, but then they decide to go back to try to figure out what this base is meant for, and that leads to the last scene of the episode, which was Anacostia and Sterling pretty much seeing a stadium full of Camarilla soldiers with their own makeshift witch box collars, and just a very terrifying visual of all those soldiers. You would think they kind of look like robots on an assembly line, and yet they're not. So it's like a very terrifying sight to see. So there's that. But let's go with the characters. For Tally specifically, thanks to Abigail's idea about changing her sight visions because she's worried about the doomsday one she got of Rael and the witch bomb. Tally tries to prevent a glass, like a cup, a glass cup from the looks of it, or a vase. She tries to prevent it from breaking, but in the end it ended up breaking by Abigail, but just at a later date. But in the vision, it was knocked over by Abigail, so it's like the same person ended up causing its destruction. So the fact that Tally only just delayed the inevitable for that little shattered glass, she kind of is worried about what the doomsday vision could mean then if she can't really stop it. Interesting concept though, for sure. Nick de Petan, we only see her briefly because she plans and does escape the holding house when the wards are dropped to allow the council to enter the premises, and that's when she kind of sneaks away from there. So we haven't seen her since that. She's also still wearing her other face too. We do also see when Alder returns, she keeps growing weaker due to the mycelium being poisoned. I think her hair either continuously turns gray or like a bluish gray from the tips upward, kind of like as if it's like a poison from the ends and it's reaching up to her scalp, which is kind of like the roots of it. Kind of cool visual for that. Wondering how they did that behind the scenes. But yeah, she's growing weaker and weaker. She's like collapsing and such. So for that, tidbit wise, now we're going to go talking about Fort Salem, mentioning back up to the first scene where Colonel Gerald from the oversight cancels mother tongue language. I should have mentioned this up when I really think about these notes, but I think it's also, he claims that mother tongue is what is separating witches from non-witches because it's the language that only witches can speak. But then at the same time, isn't Motherland supposed to be the root of all language, not just the witch language? So like, wouldn't it benefit everybody if they learned mother tongue? Logic there, Colonel. Logic there. We also see, okay, here's the thing. So we do see Alder taking Kalita and Newton to a cabin. Either it's a cabin within the mycelium world, because we do see all those like bits of like purple swirls around, or it's a cabin that was created or reinforced by the mycelium magic to either hide it, to ward it. I'm not sure. But in that cabin is the boy who originally sang his song, which brought Alder back into existence in 301. We don't have a name yet for him, or at least it wasn't said in the episode what his name was, but he was there waiting for them, and he asked Kalita if they were a shepherd. I'm assuming he's one of the shepherds of the song, but Kalita said that she was not a shepherd, unless she meant something differently. I'm not particularly sure, but that was interesting. And they're meant to stay there while Alder tracks down the remaining pieces of the first song. Also want to point out that apparently the Cession Council or Secession Council members consist of 7 tribal members, each from a each with from a different culture and a different language that all live peacefully within the secession. I'll put a list of all 7 up on screen right now. Thought that was pretty cool. A little moment there. I'm also glad that they actually included it in the translation as well too. So that's there. Also, no updates about Rael, about where President Wade or M are. Nothing about Petra, nothing about Isadora or Penelope, or about President Silver and Kara Brandt. So there is that. So 306. Let's get into the book club episode. Timeline wise, I think it's the day after the events of 305. Just because 305 ended with Hurst's attack on the Cession holding house, and that was at night. And then 306 seemed to continue like the morning after kind of a vibe. So there's that. Episode reminder. I mean, book club is kind of code word, so you could go off of that. But the first scene of the episode takes place in New York, where we see President Silver and Kara Brandt holding a meeting. I don't know who exactly, but some business thing about their next steps with having the collars for the witches and then making it seem like a trap for them later on. It was very disturbing as a scene. I know what it means now that they're talking about, now that the episode's done, but in the moment as a first scene, that's very troubling to hear. Also, we see Alban Hurst interrupting with news about Alder returning and about the Secession Council breaking their treaty with the United States, which gets Silver and Kara all excited that now they can invade the Cession and create a bloodbath when they have the Cession witches fighting against the military witches and then just swooping in. Although it looks like Hurst also, he did not have the bandages. I don't know if that was just for appearance sake when he was rushing into the meeting, or if he really didn't need the bandages, although in 305 he still had them and they were bleeding, so there's a thing there. But Hurst was then ordered to poison the mycelium even further. He seemed reluctant to have the order, as if possibly the witch vocal cords in him are kind of trying to fight back and get him to realign with the witches in a way. Not quite sure, but his attitude, or his mannerisms, I should say, seemed to give me that impression. So there's that. Storyline wise, 3 different storylines. I picked up 1 taking place in Fort Salem, 2 being Mother Mycelium's visit, which is in the Secession, and then the third one is Book Club's Side Ventures, which takes place in California. So with the first storyline at Fort Salem, there's actually 3 sub-points happening on base. So the first one is Abigail and Adil sneaking Alder back to base so she could return to the mycelium through the wall that's in Isadora's laboratory. So they manage to get her there. While doing that, they are able to see Isadora continuing her work with Penelope to try to get her back to being as human as possible and losing all the violent tendencies that came with the plague. Although those tendencies did come back when Penelope was face to face with Abigail again, because again, she was kind of part of the reason why Penelope was killed. Indirectly, because I still blame the father and the Camarilla, but anyways. And then side note on mission is third side point being Anacostia and Sterling, returning to base and reporting their findings about the Camarilla army to Petra that they found in that stadium place. While that's all happening, Petra is stuck working under oversight Colonel Gerald's commands and how they plan for the secession invasion, while kind of keeping their own witch orders under wraps in their own ways, which is pretty cool. So we see a little bit more happening Fort Salem there. With the second storyline with Mother Mycelium, we see Scylla and Edwin traveling to Quinn, who is Willa's old friend, who I believe Edwin is supposed to stay with Quinn to help keep him safe. In doing so, Scylla confesses to both of them about Rael's situation with the mycelium and being pulled into that world for protection, and also about what really happened to Willa and how she was part of Spree and how she only just died recently instead of a year ago like they had believed. Now, this leads to Quinn calling on Willa for a meeting, where then Scylla and Edwin both try to convince Mycelium Willa to let Rael come back home, but Mother Mycelium claims that she's keeping Rael in her world to protect her from people who want to harm her. We do see Rael again in the mycelium world, wanting to return home and hearing Scylla and her father and her father's voice through the death plant there. So good to see her again, though. So there is that. Third storyline with book club, we do see Tally returning home to check on her mom, and she sees firsthand about President Silver's new order with how when witches are in public, they have to put the collar around their neck to kind of identify themselves. They can remove the collars once they get back home. So she sees all that in play. We find out book club is actually just a front, as Tally's mom and her friends want to raid a government facility to steal all the witch genealogy records that they have to help them locate new witches. In doing so, Tally discovers that more enhanced witch collars that are not meant to open, like these prototype ones, allow for the witches to unlock when they get home, but these unopened ones, or these locking ones, are gonna cause more problems. And so her and her mom burn them all at the warehouse. Although her mom thinks like they've only just delayed it, Tally views it as a small victory for them because at least it will delay them and buy them more time. So I'm very glad that they were able to find that piece of Silver's plan, and it was really great to see the mother-daughter co-heist partners working together. So that was very interesting. Now, the last scene of the episode was at Fort Salem, where a bunch of the soldiers are rushing around with great news that Alder has returned. Petra sees it for herself, where Alder tells her to not lose hope. Alder disappears into the earth as mycelium before Oversight is able to actually get a clear visual of Alder. They just heard the whisperings. They were kept on the outskirts while that message was being sent, and only got to see the receding mushroom spores in the ground as her exit. So that is a hopeful ending for them there. It was great to see the students now have a pep in their step from that. Character-wise, though, we do have Thelma believing that there is a traitor on the Secession Council who alerted the Camarilla about the Bellwether unit being held at that holding house. She also believes that is why the marshal moved President Wade before the council's arrival, because he knew possibly about a traitor. And we find out when Anacostia is there which I guess we'll find out here, is that Anacostia at the end of the episode has a new mission of locating President Wade in the Secession and returning her to Fort Salem. While waiting to hear news about that, she finds out that Thelma had already created her own militia in preparation for the invasion. So, that's all that. Well, also, Anacostia is supposed to be working in a way to not alert the Camarilla or Oversight that she had escaped the Camarilla's custody, from my understanding. So, that's a bit of something there. Tidbit-wise, though, we do got a bunch. So we have Alder and Willa were seen both destroying the last of the drilling sites that were dumping poison into the mycelium. Alder seems to be stronger than so it's like after she had went back into the mycelium wall, so now she seems stronger. She didn't have the weird whitish gray blue tips to her hair, so it seems like possibly like she's been recharged. And this was also before she went and visited Fort Salem with the message. So there's that. We do see Tally still being worried about her doomsday vision that she kind of hinted at to her mom. Only Abigail truly knows the details of that vision, but Alder does hint at them trusting the mother mycelium's plan for them. This gave me the impression that either Alder knows about the doomsday vision, or like she knows about the outcome, or she knows what the vision is, but she knows that the vision needs to happen in order to get to the outcome. So I had to note nope, I'll mention that later. That's going to be mentioned in questions, so there's that. We also saw Oversight recording all the Fort Salem training classes for their own records and to add to their own research about the witch workings going on, which Abigail dubbed it as not really being a safe place if all those recordings were happening. And we also do confirmation in this episode that Alder needs to find 2 more pieces to the first song, which has me thinking that Kalita is a shepherd, because Alder is 1 piece, Newton is a 2nd piece. That guy has to be the 3rd piece. And if there's only 6 pieces of the first song, then Kalita has to be the 4th one if 2 of them are left to be found. You know what I mean? So I still think Kalita is one of them. And also, why would she be kept in the cabin for safety if she wasn't? She has to be a shepherd. So there's that. So let's move on to most shocking moments of both of the episodes. So for 305, I think for me, it was a shock to hear that the Secession Council didn't believe that the Camarilla were real, or they did not believe that they returned. I think they referred to them as being an old wives' tale or a myth, which I thought was very surprising. I mean, were they so far into their peace treaty that they just disregarded the news that was happening outside the Secession? It was quite a shock that they wouldn't even be hearing whisperings or rumblings, but just to completely write it off. It was just wow, okay. And for 306, my shocking moment was how quickly it became public knowledge that Alder had returned. I thought they would keep it under wraps on both sides. If anything, I thought they'd want to keep Alder's return away from the Camarilla, but of course she intervened to save their own people, and of course they couldn't find a way to kill Hearst. But then I'm kind of surprised that once the Camarilla find out, that they just spread that as wildfire. Why would they not want to keep that under wraps so that it did not get out that Alder had returned, and then but I guess at that point it was just everybody is now aware Alder returns. Let's just tell the students now that she has returned to up the morale and everything. I was just surprised at how quickly everyone then became in the know that she returned, right? So that was the thing there. Now let's talk about my top favorite moments. For 305, I have it that I really liked the Alder and Kalita scene that they had at the cabin. When they were kind of sharing the moment where they had to take leadership after the loss of their respective parents. And I was just when you really think about it and you remember what their dynamic was when they first met, Kalita did not trust Alder at all. And to see them be this open and vulnerable with each other was just it truly shows how far they've come and just how much they've grown from the experiences between when they first met to now. It was just really a great show of character development for me and character growth. So I really appreciate that. And also it just showed a lot more similarities between them, right? So that was something. Another favorite I did have was just Adil speaking mother tongue to greet the council. I thought that was pretty cool, but then I also had me wondering, how do you know which one to call upon? I'm still trying to get over, how does mother tongue even work? I can understand if it's the moment, it was such a fascinating scene to see him go through all the 7 different languages, but at the same time, it's did he do research to know specifically who he was going to be facing first and which language they were? Because I would understand if they gave a greeting to him in their language first and then he reciprocated in their language, I would totally get that. But because he was the one already starting the conversation and had me questioning, well, how do you know who speaks which language? They didn't say anything to you. Or did you just know that this is council person X, they spoke this is council person Y, they spoke this, and you just studied the faces to match it up right? It's very impressive, but at the same time it's how does this work? It's what is this kind of thing? So that was a favorite, just to see that display there. Also very well executed, having him start the session meeting like that. Very well done for the bellwether unit's decision making right there. starting off strong there for them. Now for 306, a huge favorite I had was just all the different reunions we got in this episode, and they were all very emotionally packed too. You have Edwin reuniting with Willa, so impactful, and just like the emotion you saw not only in their voices but in their faces too, of just seeing each other again, and then having to then also talk about how they had to let their daughter go and let her. In this case, Edwin was trying to get Willa to let Rael out of the mycelium world, to let her go and be with Scylla, the love of her life, and just kind of also talking about it in a way as if it was just a normal, like, everyday, like, oh, they're just going off to college, or no, they're leaving home to buy their own house or something, or they're gonna go backpacking through Europe, or like they had to, like, that time in a parent's life where it's time to let the child go because they're old enough now, kind of thing. It's like it was those vibes for Willa and Edwin, and it was that kind of conversation, and it's like no, with no mention of like magic. So it's like it was a relatable conversation. It was just like, oh, that tugged at my heart for sure. So there's that. The brief reunion between Alder and Isadora, as well as Alder and Petra, just to see the emotion, the relief in a way to seeing her return, because it also brought hope that like she, like their great leader for so long cannot be kept down or silent, and like they would have her to help them in this fight against the Camarilla. It was just really great, and it was also very, very emotional too when Isadora was like, "Take me with you," and it was just like Petra having this moment of like solidarity instead of being at odds with Alder. It was just like really interesting to see. And then of course you had the reunion between Petra, Abigail, and Adil, and that not only the hug between mother and daughter, but then the group hug between all three of them was just really sweet too, that they were able to have that moment. Kind of wish we got a hug between Anacostia and Abigail, but I'm hoping when the whole unit is together, Anacostia will get that hug for them. I'm hoping for that. So there's that. Another favorite I did like was book club, specifically Tally's bonding with her mom and them working together to raid the government facility. But it was just interesting to see that book club really was just a front and not like them actually talking about a book. So it was just great to get a little bit more of an understanding, because I think the only other time we really saw Tally's mom was, I think, in the pilot when she kind of wanted Tally to not go to war college or basic training, and I think again in a phone call where it showed her mom being very disapproving on Tally's decision to go to Fort Salem. So it was really great to see them on the same page by the end of the episode, and really seeing each other more clearly, I would say. It's really great to see. And the last thing I've really liked was, it was during that war meeting that Petra had with, I'm assuming it's her other commanding officers, but it was talking about the invasion over the secession, and then Oversight Colonel Gerard interrupting with his own Camarilla slight orders, and then Petra using their own specific witch speak. I don't know what they call it though, like what, far speak or I don't know, but it's when it's like that talking underneath the actual tone of like a lower vocal range that's like harder to hear. It was really interesting to see her use that to give hidden orders to her soldiers, telling them to disregard what Oversight was saying and giving her the true orders of not causing a bloodbath in the secession invasion. So I thought that was pretty cool just to see them use their skills in another way and to kind of one up the Oversight. So that's pretty cool. But let's move on to top 3 peeve moments. One peeve, or the first peeve I had with 305, was the fact that Hearst was able to have as much power in his witch workings as he had. Let me just, how do I word this? Okay, it bugged me that for him to have new vocal cords that were just newly implanted, how was he able to dish out so much power already? Like, he was still healing from the surgery. So if anything, how is he still able to talk after the surgery? Because we have to remember, like, from episodes 301 to 306, they haven't given any indication that it's been weeks in between episodes. It it's giving it it's reading it if at most a day or two between episodes. So for Hurst, it's like it's not even 2 weeks since he had his this vocal cord transplant, and yet you're telling me he's healed up enough that he can still talk, but he's healed up enough to put so much strain and stress on those vocal cords to emit all these witch workings, the way that he was able to blast our bellwether unit back into the wall. Like it did not make sense to me how someone who just had these implanted, also someone who has no real training with the vocal cord, like you have to train the muscle in order to have it do the work, right? Otherwise you do more damage. I'm glad they showed that he was bleeding a little bit, but that was like not enough, where it's like the amount of power he was able to knock them on their asses, and I'm like, how is that possible? Here are four witches who been training and who have been able to use these gifts for a lot longer than the maybe a week that Hurst was able to have his new vocal cords, and he was able to blast them back. I just could not fathom how that made sense. So there's that. Another peeve I did have was just the fact that there was no Raelle, and I really love Raelle, and it was just like, why is she absent? I take back that peeve though, because I read an interview about why Taylor Hickson, who plays Raelle, why she was absent, and it was because she was recovering after she got into a car accident when they started filming season 3. So they had to rewrite it to allow for her to recover. So they had to rewrite Raelle's storyline to explain why she would be absent. So I fully, while I miss Raelle, yeah, it would make sense if it means that Taylor needed the time to heal, then yeah, of course, write her out as best as you can to allow for that healing time. But yeah, that was one of the peeves before I found out why she was absent, was just no Raelle. It also has me wondering how exactly they would film this, because in the article she talked about how they were block shooting for episodes 1 and 2 when the accident happened. So then it just kind of had me wondering on a production level itself, because for Motherland, it's very different. It's not like with regular broadcastings where it's like they are shooting while the episodes are airing as well too. With Motherland, they shot all the episodes and then they're aired. So it's like, for me, it had me wondering, like, did they shoot them all in order? Did they clump them up so you're shooting everything in one location that is needed in all the 10 episodes? Like, it's very interesting to me how something like this would be planned. So that really had my brain going into like, well, how did production go about this? It's always been interesting to me when it comes to episodic shows, to wonder how they do it, because some shows they do blocks by scenes and stuff, and others like, no, you go by episode. So sorry, I'm going on a tangent there, but that's because I didn't have any peeves for 306. I actually really liked the episode, and I was perfectly happy with what had happened. Aside from the Camarilla, I'm always gonna hate them, but like otherwise, it did not distend my disbelief, or did not. What is the saying? I have no idea. Anyways, random questions now. So 305 questions. The first one was, could they not take off the collars themselves? It got explained during the episode, but at the beginning, when the Cession originally put the collars on our bellwether unit, they didn't do anything special to kind of show that they couldn't take them off themselves. So the whole episode, I was wondering, why are they not trying to take it off of each other if it was something where they couldn't take it off themselves? Like, at least seeing them struggle with taking them off would have been enough for me. But then by the time when Thelma came back, it did show that she had to do a special warding movement around the collar to have it unlocked. So it's only up until that point did I get an answer? But the whole episode, I was kind of wondering, like, why are you not trying to take the collars off each other? Like, why would you not try to show that struggle? Unless they mentioned it earlier on, like, what exactly those collars do. Well, I kind of knew what the collars are meant to do, but, like, to fully explain it, then, like, maybe it's just me missing it. So, that was a question-ish thing that I had. Another one was, did Anacostia and Sterling destroy the data that the Camarilla received from the party about the battle rail stuff that they had collected? Like Anacostia's was on surveillance footage of her pretty much killing Vera with her working. And they were talking about how that was new data to enter into the system for their research. So I'm wondering, did they destroy that before they left the base, or did they leave it there for them to use? I hope they destroyed it. But then I understand if they didn't, because that would have been too obvious that they did escape, you know. But then if they're not present on base, isn't that obvious that they escaped? So, questions there. Now, my 306 questions. We have, first one. Do you think Pauline is the traitor within the Secession Council? Because if we remember, she did originally make a deal with Silver before she approached President Wade in the episode that Wade was supposedly assassinated. Because it was in the first episode we met Pauline, and she was just seemed like she was all gung-ho with Silver. It had me very suspicious about her, so I'm just wondering, would she be the traitor? I would not be surprised if she was the traitor, just from that one episode alone. So, yeah, maybe? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. Another question. Do you think Tally's doomsday vision is really going to end the world? Or do you think it's something like, it's like the step before it saves the world? The reason I ask, though, is because it really reminds me of the Armageddon plot that happened at the start of Season 8 of The Flash. Huge spoiler alert right now for Flash Season 8. Carter up on screen. So it's going to still say The Flash spoilers if you want to mute it or zoom past this part, because then the card will disappear when I'm done talking about the Flash. But anyways, so the whole thing about Flash Armageddon was the fact that Guy from the future believed that Barry was going to end the world because he pretty much sets the world on fire with his actions. So he's trying to stop Barry from doing that. Only turns out that the reason why Barry destroys the world is because he has to run fast enough to travel back in time to save the world, in order to save the world. And so the visions that were showing him destroying the world was him needing to gather enough speed so he could travel back in time to correct the moment that would save the world. So it's like in that moment, it was when there was the vision of Barry destroying the world, but he needed to do that to actually save the world. So I'm wondering if this is the same case for Tally's vision, where Rael setting off the witch bomb is actually needs to be done in order to save the world. Like, what if Rael setting off the witch bomb is actually unleashing a cure upon the world to help heal and replenish it instead of actually destroying it, like Tally is meant to believe right now. So I'm wondering if that's what's really going to happen, because Alder did say trust the mother's plan. What if that is the mother's plan? To have the witch bomb go off and it's not of destruction but of healing. So that's my question there. Or that's also my theory too. So there, I'm done talking about the Flash. So there's that. My last question was, who do you think the last two pieces of the first song belong to? Do you think it's someone we've met before? That'd be kind of cool. That would also kind of show like they had like long since planned this, but yeah. Wonder who it would be. Is it someone that's like very obscure and like they're in hiding, or is it someone that's like well known in the history books, you know? So that's something there. But yeah, let's move on to predictions very quickly. So, since I had beef about the 306 or the 305 trailer revealing too much, I did not watch the 306 trailer. Which I'm actually pretty glad that I didn't, because I really enjoyed 306 and not knowing what to expect. So I purposely did not watch the 307 promo. I want to see if it's the same thing again. But yeah, if I happen to watch it on TV, that's cool. But I didn't purposely watch it for this video to like analyze and like try to pick out what pops up. But I did read the synopsis. So the 307 synopsis reads: Allies converge to protect the secession from occupation. The Camarilla march on the secession, ready to invade under the guise of smoking out our fugitives. Tally and Scylla team up while Abigail, Adil, and Anacostia seek out President Wade. See, that's a good enough, because at least I know what are the two main points. Maybe three for the episode, but I don't see exactly what's supposed to happen. Although from the looks of it, the wedding is not in this episode. I'm still waiting, and I'm trying to figure out how do they get to that point, but we'll have to wait and see about that. So I'm going to be very interested to see if I again like 307 because I did not watch the promo beforehand. So that'll be an interesting test for me. Otherwise, guys, what did you guys think of these two episodes? What did you guys like about it? What do you think will happen next in the final 4 episodes of the season? Let me know in the comments down below. Love to hear your thoughts and theories, and what else you got out of these episodes. Please share it with me. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos if you haven't done so already. Other links are down below for WordPress, for Tumblr, if you want to check those out as well. But otherwise, yeah, guys, I just thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry again for the delay of not only me recording this, but that also puts a delay on me editing and then posting it. But I really appreciate if you guys stayed to the end of the video. It means a lot to me that you take the time out of your day just to hear what I have to say about this really good and unique show that I'm really it sucks that it's ending, but at least it's ending on its terms, and hopefully we get the resolution and we get the endings tied off with a nice bow at least, or at least a satisfying conclusion to provide us with answers. Because it's been a while since I've seen a unique witch culture for a show. So yeah. So guys, that's about it. I'm going to leave it there. So I do hope you come back next week to see what I have to say about the next episode. But until then, guys, this is Mel. Wish you all a great day, great week, wherever you are. Please stay safe. It's after midnight for me. I got to go to bed. Bye, guys.